Alrighty, welcome everybody. My name is the Phoenix, and you are watching my live stream. Or for those of you who are unable to watch the live stream, you're watching the live stream replay. So welcome everybody. I really appreciate all the views, follows, likes, shares, subscriptions, etc. From all of you here on Twitch and YouTube. Really appreciate the support as we're getting geared up to run our first one-shot. So the name of this this little stream here is Lord of the Rings 5e. What the heck is it? It's a Q&A with me, the DM. You guys may have some questions about what exactly Lord of the Rings 5e is. What's the difference between Lord of the Rings 5e and D&D 5e? Is it same thing with a different title? Is it completely different, parading around as D&D 5e? You may have quite a lot of questions, and I am here to answer them. So I'm going to do a quick little live stream here. Again, we're not anticipating that I'll be able to live stream for a long time, but I'll try and live stream for at least a little while, just to explain to you guys what the difference between the two is. And with any luck, hopefully we'll have some users swing by the chat. Swing by the chat and ask their questions. If we don't have anyone swing by the chat, that is completely fine. I can speak to this blank slate, but I wanted to address a few curiosities and concerns of what the system is, and maybe make it seem a little bit more approachable for you guys as viewers, because maybe your curiosity is piqued, but you're not familiar with the system and don't know if you'd enjoy watching it. So that's why I am throwing together this live stream. So without further ado, let's get started. So first off, Lord of the Rings 5e is actually called Lord of the Rings Role-Playing for 5th edition. This has been created by Free League Publishing, and it's actually a kind of a common ground, or a for lack of a better term, it's I'm coming short on the term. It is the halfway point between two different systems. So the first system being, of course, D&D 5e. That is 2014 5e, not the new 2024 5e, which forever now and in the future I will refer to as 1D&D or 5.5e. So it's caught between 5th edition and a different system called the One Ring. The One Ring is completely different. It is a standalone system developed by Free League Publishing. And to be honest, a lot of people really like the One Ring. And the One Ring has a lot of cool stuff going for it. You roll a d12 instead of a d20. Your nat ones are usually 11s instead of 1s. And you can get magical successes on your die. You also don't quite have the same DCs and ACs that you have in 5th edition. So in the One Ring, a lot of the numbers you have to meet are decided by your statistics as a character. So early on in the game, you're going to have lower numbers to meet, and as you get further along in the game, you're going to see those more difficult, for lack of a better term, DCs approach themselves in the system. In the One Ring, their combat system is actually not based on initiative, it's based on positioning. So, you can be, I believe one of them is forward, rearward. There's 2 other ones that I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But your timing in actual initiative is determined by which position you decide to take in battle. So if you decide to be forward, you are one of the first ones to go in battle. So that's just a couple little nuances about the difference between D&D 5e and the One Ring system. A lot of people I have heard sing praises for the One Ring system. And that's, Lord of the Rings 5e is not here to discredit the One Ring system, but it's the halfway point between the 2 systems for those of us who might be interested in the One Ring but might not quite be ready to move on to a brand new system. Because maybe we're comfortable where we're at, and maybe we don't have time to learn a brand new system, or maybe just not the motivation to learn a brand new system. And that's completely all right. Lord of the Rings 5e is the halfway point. I'll be honest with you guys, it is not 5th edition. It is not a carbon copy of any D&D campaign. And that's kind of based off of the world that Lord of the Rings is centered around, the Tolkien universe. Arda does not have sorcerers and warlocks and wizards galore and cleric. Like, it is, magic users are few and far between, and when you encounter one, it is not to be taken lightly. So one of the differences that kind of segues into is there is no spell casting for the player characters, or what Lord of the Rings role-playing calls the player heroes. So your player heroes don't have spell casting available to them. As a dungeon master, I love this change. One of the challenges I find with building a one-shot or a campaign as a dungeon master is getting around the spellcasting feature of anything. A lot of mysteries and little gems as a DM that you maybe want to keep hidden from your players can be easily uncovered by a well-placed spell, like identify, for example. You might not want players to know what school of magic something comes from, or you might not want them to be able to talk to the murdered individual. And I know there's ways as a DM we can combat those spells, but you don't want to rip out the tongues of every single dead body you have just because your player character can cast Speak with Dead. That is not enjoyable as a DM to railroad the players like that. And it's not enjoyable for the players to have something and not be able to use it ever. Lord of the Rings 5e removes spellcasting entirely, and it really just all around levels the playing field. Lord of the Rings role-playing solves a lot of balance issues that I see in D&D 5e. I can't speak for other editions. I am not savvy on other editions. I have only ever done 5th edition D&D, so I can't speak for what 3rd edition or 4th edition or 2nd edition was like as far as balance goes. And obviously I can't speak to the new 2024 1D&D. I can't speak to what balance issues those systems had, and what might have been solved or complicated by the 5th edition rendition of the D&D system. But I can speak to Lord of the Rings role-playing. And comparing them side by side, a lot of balance for me as a DM was resolved by moving to this system. So what we're going to go into just the variations between 5th edition and Lord of the Rings 5e. I have it kind of broken down into a couple different sections. One I call For the Player Heroes, the other I call For Adventures. So For the Player Heroes is going to address all of your character creation related stuff and stuff related to the players and their player sheet. For Adventures relates to how they're interacting with the world. And there's a little bit of overlap between the two categories, but I've split it up fairly decently, I feel. I want to preface this. I am in no way, shape, or form an expert on Lord of the Rings role-playing. I'm just really excited about the system. I'm excited to run a D&D 5e Lord of the Rings one-shot. I'm excited to introduce it to my players, and so I threw together this variations to 5e list to go through a bit of the differences between the two systems. Maybe we'll get through all of it today. Maybe I'll have to have another live stream. Maybe someone will pop into the chat and I'll have to, I'll answer their questions instead. We will take it as we go and see where we end up. So first change that you need to be aware of is player characters are called player heroes. This I've already mentioned. It's a slight change to the terminology used in 5th edition, but it's obviously not a big stretch. There's a lot of different terminologies that are used in the Lord of the Rings 5e system that are different from the D&D 5e system. And I'm going to go through a bunch of those, so buckle up your seatbelts. The second change you need to know about is that the Dungeon Master is actually referred to as the Lore Master in Lord of the Rings 5e. Some people I know don't like the term Lore Master. I actually kind of think it's kind of cool because there's really no dungeon crawls in Lord of the Rings role-playing. They did just release their Moria supplement, which will be essentially a dungeon crawl. It is a huge source material. It's really just an underground nation, Moria. But that's really the closest we get to a dungeon crawl of sorts in Lord of the Rings role-playing. you're not going to, you know, the yawning portal and diving down into the portal in Lord of the Rings. Second up, we actually have changes in the races. So in Lord of the Rings 5th edition, races are called cultures. And the culture to which an adventurer belongs often defines them more profoundly than simply in terms of customs and traditions. So for this reason, the most important choice that players make is to select the culture of origin for their adventures. Obviously, there are different cultures available in Middle-earth than there are in D&D. These include, there's actually quite a few, but to be really brief without going into the subcultures, we've got bardings, dwarves, elves, hobbits, men, and rangers. We've got quite a few subcultures for each. Dwarves have a few different variations, anywhere from a dwarf of Erebor to a dwarf of the Iron Hills. Elves, you've got the High Elves of Rivendell or the Elves of Lindon. Hobbits, there are Stoor, Harfoot, and Fallowhide. And then men, you kind of have divvied up as well. So you've got men of Bree, and men of Eriador, men of Tharbad, the marsh folk of Swanfleet, and the fisher folk of the shore. So those are a few of the different subcultures available. There's a few other dwarf ones, but I won't go into all of them because there's a fair number of dwarf ones. And these cultures decide more than just, okay, these are your, you know, you get dark vision and here's your speed and, you know, bada bing, bada boom. It also decides your background. So a player hero's culture is important for establishing a variety of things, including their background. Backgrounds reveal something about the origins of the player heroes, helping players in visualizing their previous experiences and identity. Each culture typically provides 6 options for a background. And obviously, your dungeon master might be like, these actually don't fit my players. I'm going to customize the background of them. Customized backgrounds are always available in any D&D game, so long as your dungeon master is open to the concept. Your culture also decides your standard of living. So instead of getting a coin purse based off of your background, you get a set of starting gear and your coin purse based off of your culture. So there's frugal living, common, and then I'm forgetting the other one, but exorbitant or fancy level of living. So depending on which culture you choose, you might have a different quality of gear, and obviously slightly more or less coin, depending on what you choose. Hobbits are considered to be at a common standard of living, so they get kind of the middle ground between all the cultures. Another thing that's are similar to feats, and they can only be acquired once per player hero. But you've got essentially two types of virtues. You've got your common virtues that come naturally to any adventurer and can be earned through time and practice, or you have your cultural virtues. So your cultural virtues are, you guessed it, based off of your culture. They represent secret talents of the dwellers of Middle-earth and let adventurers accomplish things that are seen as extraordinary, if not magical, by ordinary folk. So, in summary, your culture is your race. It decides your background and the feats available to you. Next up, we have callings. So callings are what we call classes. Whatever it is that motivates the player heroes, it must be something that for them is worth the risk of crossing swords. The callings available in in Lord of the Rings 5e is not the same as 5th edition. It is completely different. The callings you have available, some of them share similarities to classes from D&D, but you will find none of the same ones. It is a completely different set. So we've got a few different ones, and I actually made a note here just to kind of give you guys an idea of what the which calling translates most readily to a different class for 5th edition, because maybe you guys want to try it out, but maybe you particularly like playing a rogue. I kind of went through them and I tried to do my best to compare them to things. There is one calling that really just doesn't fit any of the boxes that is met in D&D 5e. So take from that what you will. Let me just grab out my little notes here. I made this half a minute ago. All right, there we go. So first off, we have your captain. So captain is going to be very similar to a paladin. They have an aura. They've got they're kind of charisma based. Next up, we have your champion, and champion is basically a fighter. They've got their different fighting styles, but they also have their second wind feature. They excel at either dex-based or strength-based combat. Next up, we have messenger. Messenger is our stray calling. This is the one that doesn't really fit any of the current boxes. It's kind of got elements of bard, kind of has elements of rogue, kind of reminds me a little bit of artificer in a way, but it really doesn't compare to any of those in a significant enough way for me to say, yes, this is the translation class for this calling. Next up, we've got your scholar, which is basically going to be a bard. They can go either healing or lore based, but they've got your bardic inspiration dice. Then we've got your treasure hunter, who is a rogue. And then finally we have a warden, which is going to be your ranger with your favored terrain, favored foe, that kind of stuff. So that's really it. We've only got the 3 callings in Lord of the Rings 5th edition. There's not a whole lot of options as far as sub-callings for these. Each one provides you about 2 options, or not about 2 options. They provide you 2 options for each sub-calling per calling. So you can go one way or the other. Maybe your lore master is going to be interested in developing some homebrewed ones. I'm sure it's no harder than developing a subclass for D&D. There are a few variations in callings, and just in player heroes in general, with Lord of the Rings 5th edition that is worth mentioning. The first being that the maximum level the player hero can reach is level 10 instead of level 20. You might hear that and think, this system can't be serious for high-level gamers. That's not necessarily true. Your lore master can actually choose to continue to give you different benefits after level 10 that you can continue to work towards. It's just those benefits are not tied to your callings level, like it is in D&D 5e. So they can give you additional feats and different items and that kind of stuff to expand your capabilities as an adventurer without having different class features or calling features available after that level 10 mark is reached. As I mentioned before, spellcasting is not an option on any of these callings. So you're not going to find your sorcerer, your wizard, your cleric. None of that's available. I actually really enjoy that aspect of Lord of the Rings 5e. I think that it is one of the things that brings balance to the game and makes it a little bit of a level playing field for your players. So next up we have actually a change in your set of skills available. So Lord of the Rings 5e went away with Arcana, History, Religion, and Survival. And you may not be surprised about the Arcana, but you may hear the other 3 and think, what do we do without being able to roll for History or roll for Survival? And I will tell you exactly what they did. They actually introduced some new skills that you can use instead. Three of these are wisdom and 2 of these are intelligence based. So your 3 new wisdom based skills are explore, hunting, and travel. And then your 2 new intelligence based skills are old lore and riddle. And we can kind of get into a little bit of what you might use these different skills for as we get through some of the changes in how it changes adventuring. But what you need to know for now is a lot of this is used in the system's traveling mechanism. so it may not be something that is readily apparent to you on what the difference between exploring and travel might be. But as you actually get to play a Lord of the Rings 5th edition, you actually get to realize, oh, hey, this is what why I actually get to use my travel for, or why I get to use using your old lore roll instead of your history roll. And even the riddle skill, I actually really enjoy the idea of the riddle skill. It makes me think of Bilbo going against Gollum and having a riddle off. It's a little bit of trickery and a little bit of cleverness. And you use that, and you can pry out information or get someone to do something that maybe they weren't privy to or weren't readily capable of doing previously. So those are the differences in the skills. One really big difference in callings when you go into Lord of the Rings 5th edition, and this does not have a translation in D&D 5e. The closest thing I guess you could get to it is maybe the little flaws box on your character sheet. I don't know about anyone else, but I've never found the flaws section really held that much weight in D&D 5e. In Lord of the Rings 5th edition, their translation of the flaws system is something called your shadow path. And unlike your flaws system, which can be made up by you as a player, and you can kind of role play how much of an influence it actually has on your role playing and on your gameplay. The shadow path actually has an entire system based around it. So each calling has its own defined shadow path. And your shadow path is what makes you susceptible to the influence of the shadow, and it tells you what your fate will be should you begin to succumb to the shadow. So different things give you what's called shadow points. Dread, greed, misdeeds, and sorcery are all working against the player heroes to weigh on your hearts and on your minds. And as this burden grows, you gain shadow points. And as your shadow points reach certain levels, you actually gain different conditions. So there's two new conditions in the Lord of the Rings 5th edition system. One is called miserable, and one is called anguished. Miserable is the lesser of the two. So as you gain your shadow points, you get to miserable. You can still function if you have the miserable condition, but it's not going to be that fun. I actually have a little thing here that kind of gets into what the differences between the two conditions are. Let me just pull it up here. Oh, that is not the one I'm looking for. So the miserable condition, sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up, but off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure it works kind of like exhaustion. Oh, here's my supplement. There we go. So miserable. So your miserable, where is it? So a miserable character, and this is the exact wording in the Lord of the Rings rule book, the core supplement. A miserable character decreases the fellowship rating of the company by 1. In addition, if a miserable character's D20 roll is a 1 or a 2, the roll is a failure regardless of the DC for any ability check, attack roll, or saving throw. So it's kind of the first stop when you start to gain your shadow points. So you can gain up to a certain amount, and then when you reach that amount, you gain the miserable condition. After you reach the miserable condition, if you continue to accumulate shadow points, you become what's called anguished. So your anguish is when your shadow point score is equal to the full value of your wisdom score. So if you're a low wisdom character, you're going to become anguished far sooner than a character who has a high wisdom score. So an anguished character is miserable, so they still have that miserable condition, but they also have disadvantage on all ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws. And there is only one way to recover from becoming miserable. So once they reach this point, they can get rid of their shadow points only one way, by playing out a bout of madness. And a bout of madness is a violent reaction marking a significant step in their downward course towards degradation. It's the difference for each player character is based off of what your calling is. So your shadow path has certain conditions related to it. I'm just going to read off like an example one just to go through to give you guys kind of an idea of what exactly it is I'm talking about here. So let me just pull up just an example condition. So we have, let's go with dragon sickness, because I feel if you are familiar with The Hobbit, you're familiar with what dragon sickness is. So dragon sickness is just one of 6 different shadow paths available to the player heroes. So when you begin to accumulate your shadow points, and you get halfway to your wisdom score and you get miserable, you get your miserable condition. And then when you meet your wisdom score, you're going to become anguished. And you first, to get rid of it, you play out a bout of madness. And this is a loss of control. So the players describe how their character loses control for a short period of time, doing something that they're going to possibly later regret. So players should take into account the source of where they gained their last shadow point, and what it was that pushed those characters beyond their limit, and consider what their shadow path is. So with dragon sickness, you have that violent outburst, that loss of control, and once you do that, your shadow points reset, but you gain your first level on your downward descent on your shadow path. So the first level in the dragon sickness shadow path is called grasping. So if you become grasping, you seek to accumulate gold and precious items above all else, just for the sake of possessing them. So saying that out loud, you can see how that can be significantly more impactful as an element in your story, compared to, say, a flaw that your players threw in because it was suggested in the background and never looked at again. And as they progress downwards, they're going to progress by, again, their shadow score increasing, having a bout of madness, and then they go downwards to their next level on their shadow path. So just to give you a second example, in Dragon Sickness, your second level is called Mistrustful. When your prized possessions start to weigh you down and become a treasure to be guarded, even the good advice of friends appears to mask dubious intentions. So even if you are encumbered and maybe you don't want to leave camp because you've got these prizes, you might be mistrustful of your other player heroes. There are 4 levels, or I guess 4 bouts of madness that a player hero can have in their shadow path. Once they reach the bottom, once they are at that 4th level, there's 2 things that can happen. The first is they're lost to madness. So you succumb to the shadow. This might result in your death. It might result in you going off to a solitary place. Others might end up, taking retribution on you, or taking your fate into their own hands, or you return to Valinor. So that is something specific to elves in the Shadow Path. So when elves are burdened by the shadow, they would seek to sail into the west to leave behind the sadness and the misery of the world, and lose that source of shadow on their soul. So with each calling, you're going to have your different shadow paths, and it plays a big part in how your player characters get to interact with one another and how they interact with the world. I think that it's a really cool mechanic, and it really shows the struggle for them. But I do have to log off now. Unfortunately, my baby is awake now. But thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I appreciate being able to give you a chance to learn a little bit about the Lord of the Rings roleplay system. And if you like what you're hearing, give me a follow, a like, a share. I'm on Blue Sky, so you can always go there to learn a little bit more about when we're doing our first one-shot with the Lord of the Rings role-playing system. Again, thank you all so much, and